So it's information, entertainment, motivation, and inspiration. Is not proactively expanding their network, following up on their own contacts, having a very clear sales process where you are contacting potential leads over and over and exposing them to your content. 70-75% of the buyer journey is happening outside of sales, which means that your potential clients, small companies, but also big companies, they want to consume content before talking to you.
Welcome everybody to another edition of Creative Talk powered by Ngrane, where we talk about design, technology, and how AI can help us unlock your creative greatness. Today our guest is Claudio Fray and me, Reggie Valpoort, together with David van Delden. We're going to host this episode. So Claudio, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much, Reggie. My name is Claudio Fray. I am a LinkedIn expert, marketing and sales expert, and I'm here to talk about AI and social media. So let's go for it.
Awesome. We speak a lot with clients, and one big question is creating content, getting more clients and leads from LinkedIn, getting more clients and leads from anything online. And what would be one of the biggest issues that you come across when clients come to you with, okay, we need to create more content, and we know about AI, but we don't know how to use AI properly? What would you tell them?
The first thing I would tell them is you need to educate yourself because it's very easy to misuse AI. We've all been on LinkedIn or any other social media platform actually where you see a lot of content that is pretty much the same, and you literally recognize the words and the structure of the text that it's been made by AI. Also stuff like generated images is also a little bit fake. And I think then you're missing the point, because AI has the potential to create something so great and so high quality. But if you don't know what you're doing, you are kind of doing the opposite. You're destroying your own brand instead of building something up and using the power of AI. So I think the first thing would be to educate yourself, to really understand how to use it, how to prompt, what is possible with AI, but also to just experiment with it, to just play around a little bit, see what happens, and see how you can also create a learning curve for yourself and try something out and improve as you go.
Yeah, it's interesting that curve is also going further and further up. I think if we look at Midjourney images way in the beginning, somebody couldn't tell that. Somebody would see it and think, oh wow, what is this? Or or texts that's being generated or content. But now, sometimes I notice it even with my wife, for instance. Oh, that's AI. She can now detect what is AI and what is not. It's becoming a trend now. People are seeing that repetitive, that trending line of what is AI generated content and what is user generated content. And I think indeed, what you're saying, Claudio, educate yourself, and especially now with AI, because now you see a trend. Okay, everybody's doing AI. You can see it everywhere now. AI, not AI, AI.
Exactly.
And now we need to learn how to work with AI.
Exactly.
The skill of prompting. Yeah.
And also to understand what else you can use it for, because just the text and the images is such a tiny part of what AI can do. I've been seeing some really interesting AI generated videos, and you're almost not able to tell the difference between something you filmed in the studio and an AI generated video, which is also very interesting if you're going to do brand movies, if you're going to do shorts, if you're going to do podcasts or explainer videos. It can really change the way you use media for your client acquisition, your branding, your sales. Very interesting what's going on.
Yeah.
And if would be a place for businesses to start, what would you recommend? So you mentioned educate yourself. Yeah. Is there like specific tool from all now the big landscape of tools that AI now has? Is there one specifically you say, okay, if you want to start somewhere, start here?
I think for sure something like ChatGPT or Perplexity. I think that's really the bread and butter of AI. But definitely, I think you guys know it even better, what tools are out there, what methods are out there. But I think the absolute minimum is Perplexity and ChatGPT, and start using it. For example, I use it when I'm working with my B2B clients for their LinkedIn branding and their sales. I usually use it for research. So to research client information, market information, create content, so posts, also ideas on what kind of posts to publish. And also use it just to get the right amount of data quickly. But there is so much more out there. I think it's almost difficult to explain in just such a short time. What do you guys use? You guys use it for a bunch of other things. This is the basic stuff.
Well, in general, we do use, of course, one of the main player, the ChatGPT, but we also are heavy users of Midjourney. And we use also, what would be the one that we use often, like Octopus, which is not really, it is AI, site mapping.
Yeah, site mapping.
Yeah. Because you use the AI tools a lot for, especially the designing part. Yeah. What are the things that you use?
So the ones already mentioned, Midjourney, although today, I discovered Rev or Reve. I still need to figure out how you pronounce it, but it's a heavy competitor for Midjourney. I mean, it's, I think soon to speak, but I already am seeing way better results in Midjourney. I'm enjoying it right now very much. So Rev, for generating images, Runway, I use Runway, or Luma for video. Yeah, there's so many tools. And also you have AI tools within tools. So Photoshop has its AI tool. Figma has now an AI tool, and pretty much everything I do now is AI. So
everything, Google, like Gmail. I recently noticed that Gmail has this Gemini in your email to help organize your emails. HubSpot has also this intelligence to help you understand who you need to send emails to or outreach to based on, you know, their demographic behavior. It's crazy what's going on. Yeah. And what about designing? How do you see it affecting, you know, the use of Midjourney and those type of AIs? How is it affecting your creative process?
It makes me generate concepts much faster now. Back then, I would have a concept in my head, but then I need to work, you know, I need to create it. I need to design it, which means that my mind right now, I have a capacity to think of 3 concepts, but to be able to create those 3 concepts, it took me hours and hours. And now with AI, I can just, you know, I can create this, so my vision can then go into that AI, and then I prompt it and it generates now the concepts for me. So, you know, I think the quality is still there, but now I can do things much faster. So,
and when you're ideating something, do you also show your client while you're in the process of building, or is it more for yourself and as a reference, and then later down the road you?
Yeah, I do always present to my client a series of concepts. So not at that moment when I'm creating them, but the first demo is always a variation and alternatives of concepts. Of course, I tell my clients, you know, or we work it out together. This is the concept, and then I come with a couple of mood boards and ideas.
It's crazy. Back then, a couple of years ago, I'm sure something like this would have taken you so much more extra time just to create a few extra scenarios. You wouldn't even do it because, you know, 4 of these 5 scenarios are just going to get shut down. Yeah. And now you have all this power to create more options so that your client is more satisfied and you have more accuracy in what you're going to present. Yeah, very interesting to see also how you're using it.
Yeah. And, you know, back to AI and LinkedIn, what for you would be biggest misconception when it comes to AI and LinkedIn? And let's say in general, creating content for LinkedIn, because you already started talking about education. I myself hear a lot of people say, well, it's just, you know, just put in the ChatGPT now can create content for you. So put in the input and then you can generate
copy paste, easy minutes.
It's easy. Just put it in and then it generates content for you. But how do you look at that, and how do you?
I think we are now entering an era where most companies and most professionals are very aware. Like you mentioned before, they're very aware of the existence of AI and the basic implementations that we're kind of becoming tired of content. So the level of your content has to be so much better compared to before for it to have the impact you want, for it to have that your attention is captivated, that there's some kind of emotion, that you're entertained, that you're motivated. And I think that the more you need to find this balance between depth and speed. And that's always going to be the game, because you need to have a certain volume, you need to have a certain quality, that it's a good content piece, but it's also, touching you as a consumer, as a human, and you need to have a certain speed to produce it. So from ideation to posting, there also needs to be speed there. And I think a big misconception is that AI will just replace all of this and will do all the work for you. And AI is not, I think where we're standing right now, with the capacities most people have, it's not going to replace this whole process. It's going to help you get better at these processes, but you still need to really think about the strategy. You need to really evaluate what you're putting out there. You also need to infuse it with personality, because a lot of AI generated content is very factual, bland, or if you give an input, it's limited to what the tool knows. The tool doesn't know all the things that's in your head, all the experiences you have. Yeah. And I think exactly those 2 points, that's the thing that makes a content piece great. So your own stories, your experiences, your own emotions, that you can infuse the content pieces with your own experiences. And that, I think if you can collaborate as a person with that part and let AI do the factual stuff, then you will get very high quality content piece that's very different from all the stuff we are seeing out there.
Yeah, more and more AI tools, you now see it with the personalization feature. Meaning, you can incorporate your own thoughts, your way of, even how you wanted to prompt certain things. Like sometimes ChatGPT prompts things in a way that always ends it with a little explanation. This is it's a summary that I gave you, and I already told ChatGPT I don't need that summary anymore. List it like this. Sometimes it lists 10 different ideas, but it separates them with a horizontal line, and I cannot copy the whole thing. It irritates me. So I also told ChatGPT not to do that anymore. So
it's trainable. It's more trainable.
You can train it now, and indeed.
But still, I think that the value of content. So when I look at content, I always tell my clients that content has 4 functions. So it's information, entertainment, motivation, and inspiration. So it has to do a combination of those 4 things. Yep. And a lot of these things are based on association. So your stories, your own experiences, emotions versus the facts you're presenting. Yep. And AI doesn't have the capacity yet to extract all the possible stories from your mind into this specific content piece. So for example, one piece I posted on my own LinkedIn was how I started with sales, just to give people an insight on how I got into this field. And I remember I made a video of how I started selling car wash tickets in front of the supermarket back where I'm from. And that's something that's a story you would never get in there if you don't insert it into the AI. And sometimes, the greatness of the human mind, where we think of a certain point we want to make, and suddenly you have a story in your mind that you haven't thought of in years, maybe. Yeah. And that's something that really makes content convert, actually.
So that's the thing, because like in your case, you were able to go back and bring that back forward to a story regarding sales and make it relevant, of course, because it was a relevant story. But how do you help businesses or business owners that are maybe not that type of person, that are easily good storytellers or are able to recollect those stories in the right frame? How do you help those business owners?
It's a skill. I think storytelling and association is something, it's like a muscle. You need to train it. So if you want to be a good storyteller and also be able to make these connections, so there was a certain story and I can now connect it to my own professional field or my target, my goal, I want to create awareness or conversion, so I want to acquire new clients. it's all about also taking the time and taking weeks, months to master the skill. AI provides a framework. So there is a framework, there are templates. And while you are doing multiple iterations, it gets easier. So in the beginning, it's going to be a little bit crappy. It's going to be a little bit robotic. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. I always have clients telling me in month 2 or 3, they say that now that they've been doing this process using AI, having a certain basis, that they have more mental capacity to recollect and bring up these stories compared to before, because they're not so concerned about the information anymore. They have the mental capacity to be creative. And I think that's the great thing about AI. It helps you unlock your creativity because you don't have to, you're not weighted down by the trivial stuff anymore. So AI is really helping us tap into this creativity, this association that you have time to actually sit down and think about, or walk, or in the car, or in the shower, or whatever. But you have less mundane things mundane tasks to worry about.
So is that like a process that people could use? Because I know of a lot of people that have a certain epiphany, like, ooh, I want to create a content regarding this. Yeah. And then once the day after or the week after, then they sit down to actually write the content, then that idea is no longer there. Yeah. So now by using AI, you can basically just either create a voice note or speak directly to, for example, ChatGPT, and then start the process of creating the content whenever you want.
I do this a lot actually with Perplexity. I voice note a certain idea, and then I always say, write 3 posts with this as an inspiration, and then I read 2 of them. I think, well, but it's really interesting. That's also the process and the way to extract the information out of your own head. That's also a skill. It's something you need to train. So,
if there's a business owner watching this episode and is thinking, okay, I know I should create more content. I've been hearing it, everybody saying it. I could get more leads, but what is a process that I could follow that will help me get more leads?
That's a very big question. That's a very big question.
Try to break it down.
Okay. So I think using AI in acquiring new clients on LinkedIn. So if we would make that combination, I think the most important thing, which I see companies getting wrong all the time, is, just starting and just doing something. I mean, it beats doing nothing, but a lot of people out there, a lot of companies out there are just throwing out content that is AI generated, but it's all over the place. I think the first thing you need to do is have a plan. What is your goal? What type of companies are you trying to acquire? What type of contacts do you need for that? And once you have the strategy, what's my goal and how am I getting there? That's the strategy. How am I getting to my goal? Then you can start creating content which speaks to their pains and their needs. So that helps generate awareness, but also position you as a thought leader, just like we're doing here. We're creating content. There's a podcast. I'm presenting a topic. You're presenting a topic. And this is creating awareness, but also a certain thought leadership. We are generating thought leadership content. And then what a lot of people don't do, which is also one of the biggest mistakes, is not proactively expanding their network, following up on their own contacts, having a very clear sales process where you are contacting potential leads over and over and exposing them to your content as well. So I think that if I would summarize it, is have a strategy, have a clear plan on how you're going to, speak to your audience, and then have a good execution as well, and have a process to do that. So you need X amount of content pieces to generate awareness, and you need a plan and a process to with military precision to follow up on your contacts and exposing them to the right content. And then at the moment that they need something, they need to design anything, or they need to build a website or app, or they need to get creative on an idea, then they can contact you, because then you have been top of mind and giving them that value.
Yeah, interesting. And also something that I think is also very important is, and a lot of businesses forget to do this is the fact that you want to start putting out content. You also need to start consuming content. You also need to start seeing what everybody else is posting, read content in your own industry, see what they're doing, learn from it. And in general, just educate yourself on your own matter, because, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all experts, but every day, and especially now with AI, everything is rapidly changing. So stay up to date, but also read a lot and see what the competition is doing, see what your target audience is doing. So consume content. That's also super,
You cannot be a thought leader if you don't have a vision of what's going on in the market. I think that's the most important thing. If you don't, thought leader already implies that you have a thought on what's going on in your field, you know, and in the market. So that consumption of content, it's actually pretty underrated. A lot of people are pushing content, but they don't know what's going on.
No, exactly.
You know, that's kind of keeping you in your own little bubble.
Yeah, exactly. There's always stuck into, I need to create. But sometimes it's good to let go and consume.
What I do for that is I have a couple of thought leaders on different fields that I also like to follow. And of course, when I match that to what I see in my own client base, then sometimes it creates such a gap, which is very interesting. You know, the gap between what the pros are doing and the market that needs you is doing.
But that's a good tip. Like what tip would you give business owners on what kind of content they should consume?
When I look at myself, what I really like to consume is a couple of dimensions. So not just my field, not just sales and marketing, but for example, have a broad sense of business. For example, on human resources, there are some things I like to consume to keep up to date with the law, keep up to date with trends, what's going on in the market, and for employees and employers, but also personal development. You know, certain coaches I follow, certain psychologists, certain psychobiologists, whatever you call that. So there are a couple of, to create some kind of, you know, orientation, broad orientation, and what's going on in the world in general. And based on that, I'm able to have a more clear overview. Of course, it's impossible to keep track of everything, but it does give you a sense of direction. And for example, I follow the Hormozis are actually two people that I follow.
Layla and Alex. Amazing.
Exactly. And it's funny that they are both have a totally different
expertise,
different corner they occupy. So following both of them already gives such a broad overview. And I also know that what they are putting out, they are also getting from somewhere. So based on that, I already know that there's a lot of vision there, and you can form an actual accurate vision based on that.
Yeah, cool.
And I like those two also because they create such volumes of content nowadays.
And high
quality, and they're testing things at the forefront of the content creation. You know that once you see what they're doing, usually a few weeks later, you're seeing other people using the same format.
True.
Right? So
I see that a lot.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask a controversial question. Which companies should not focus on creating content and focusing on something else?
Which company should
or
not
what type
focus.
of company, or when should somebody not focus on actually creating content, but focusing on something else? Maybe first or deprioritize content creation.
I don't think there's a situation where you should deprioritize creating content, because I also think it's funny. This is something I learned from the Hormozis actually. You don't need to create content. You are documenting something that you anyway would do. That's actually the best content. So, for example, for the listeners, a lot of stuff we are talking about now, we've been talking about for weeks. We've been spoken about it one-on-one, in a group, in meetings. So it's basically documenting the thoughts we're having anyway. And I think if you look at it like that, it's the documentation of what you're doing. It's also the value you're already delivering. Why wouldn't you put it out there? I think, however, there is a moment where you can scale it up, and there's a moment to be very pragmatic about it. And I think most companies that are actually just starting out should focus on sales way more. So there should be like some kind of basic awareness and value happening. but there should be a ton more of outreach. And I think most business owners I work with, from 0 to, let's say, a 5 million euro revenue per year, they don't do nearly enough sales. So when I look at their amount of hours they're doing per week, sometimes it's 4 or 6.
Outreach, you mean? Yeah.
No, like hours per week, effective, conversation, outreach, etc. While I think in that phase of your business, you want to be doing minimum 16 hours of sales per week, because that's what your business thrives on. If you lose one big client, you've got a problem. So I think that's in the startup scale-up phase. That's the moment where you should have a healthy basis of content, but like 40 to 50% of your time should be doing outreach, following up, having those conversations, and bringing in the dough.
Well, awesome. So, our episodes are fairly short, so we're getting to the point that we're wrapping it up. But I always like to ask, is there something else that you would like to share with the audience in your field of expertise that they might take home with?
Yeah. I think coming back to the previous point, so if you should deprioritize content, interesting fact is this was researched by Gartner, by LinkedIn, and multiple institutes. Right now, so today, end of March 2025, 75% of the buyer journey is happening outside of sales, which means that your client, your potential client, small companies, but also big companies, they want to consume content before talking to you. And that's the role of content. They are already moving to that sale before you talk to them. The more we move into this digital age, the smaller the percentage of the buyer journey is happening in sales. Because we have all this information. We're going to make up our minds before we ever even talk to these companies. So if we are aware of that, you also understand that if we have a conversation and then somebody has to think about, or I have to send out an offer, the content is going to help you move to that yes or no. So the role of content is not just awareness anymore. It's actually
the start of the sales process.
The start, but also the progression of your sales process. So it will help accelerate whatever existing sales conversations you have going on. So content is no longer just eyeballs. It's actually relationship building and deal closing.
I think you made it very clear. If anybody's watching this, the key point is create content regardless in which stage you're in. And then if you're at a smaller stage, also prioritize the sales and the outreach and the conversations.
And use AI, because AI is really going to make you smarter, better content, more creative. That's really important. If you don't use AI, you're going to miss out. You're going to be way behind in a couple of months, years, probably months.
Well, Claudio, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you.